The three heroes ventured into the Forbidden Lands. Their names were Elrond the Greatest, Boromir Stonehold, and Nick. Yeah, exactly. Today we're talking about how to create names that actually feel consistent, believable, and well-fitting for your fantasy world. We are focusing now specifically on sentient races. I will use elves, humans, dwarves, and orcs as my main examples, but the point is to show you how to build your own naming system without actually relying on a random generator. If you're interested in deeper, more theoretical breakdown of conjuncts, make sure to check out my first video on language creation. And let's begin. But before we start, greetings stranger. My name is Katia, I'm a narrative game designer and a fantasy writer. So here we talk about fantasy, books, games, how to create worlds. We talk about interesting games, whatever, if you like any of these topics, you're welcome here. There is something interesting about us humans. We are very good in pattern recognition. When we encounter a pattern that feels familiar, our brain processes it more easily. Familiarity feels comfortable and our brain prefers comfortable things. But when something looks or sounds unusual, our brain needs extra effort to process it. It doesn't necessarily interpret it as a threat, but it does flag it as something unusual, like, I don't recognize this, I don't know if I like it, so let's pay attention to this. The same idea applies to languages and names. Readers and viewers instantly pick up on sound patterns. You don't need a degree in linguistics to know that Vladimir sounds Slavic. James sound like English. Medina comes from Arabic-speaking cultures, and Li is something like the Chinese name. Real-world cultures have distinct naming traditions and recognizable sound patterns, which help us intuitively guess where a name comes from, or at least what it feels like. Okay, so we are keeping things simple. Your best friend in name creation is Phonotactics. Sounds a bit intimidating, but don't worry, it's actually very simple. Phonotactics is just a fancy way of saying that every language has rules about which sounds can appear together and which ones cannot. For example, in English, we do not start words with pt, but Greek does. That's why English words with pt at the beginning are borrowed from Greek. And in Japanese, you won't find multiple consonants stacked together like CTR or KR. We're going to use the same idea for our fantasy languages. When you stack a lot of consonants together, the word sounds harsher and more aggressive. That's why Krashnak immediately feels orcish or brutal, while Elverel feels light, elegant, and elven. So, how to build your own phonotactic profile? You don't need to build an entire conlink, you just need a simple set of rules that your names follow. Let's break it down. Number 1, pick the typical sounds. Think about the culture in your fantasy book for which you want to create names and answer a question. What sounds define it? For example, harsh consonants like K, J, R feel rough, militaristic, and is a good fit for dwarven or orcish names. Or if you only have human races, is it suitable for some, Nords? Soft consonants like L, M, N feel melodic, airy. That's why a lot of elf names contain them. Number 2, decide on the syllable shapes. Syllables are not something we think too often, honestly, but that actually can change the whole aesthetic of your language or names. They either could be like CV, like consonant and vowel, like K, lay. Names with a syllable shape feel more like smooth, flowing, and it is often used for elves or like some mystical cultures. Another is consonant, vowel, consonant, like Trak, Dorf. It sounds strong, grounded, and like starry, something suitable for orcs or maybe dwarves. Feel free to test different combinations, and if you want your names to sound even rougher, you can use consonant clusters. Consonant clusters like CTR, KR, GRK, fantastic for orcs, demons, or harsh northern tribes. Even with these 2 points, or 3, your names can feel pretty authentic, but let's move forward. Create a mini allowed sounds chart. This tab locks in your style and prevents you from accidentally creating names that do not fit. Like in Elven culture, for example, allowed sounds can be, L, N, V, R. And diphthongs like I, E, or E. And you should avoid harsh clusters like gr, kr, dr. So now your Elven names will always sound like they came from the same language family. Quick demonstration. Let's generate a few names using these ideas. Like for Elven, it can be like Aelina, Leorin, Valaeth, Irian, Naivorin. For dwarves, it can be like Krundar, Brokmir, Dorgan, Tragnur, Gorvak, and stuff. For human kingdoms like Melvar, Rihanna, Harlock, Serik, Davran, Eric. You could notice how each group feels like it comes from a different culture, even though their process is, well, super simple. Names always reflect the culture behind them. So if you want to take the names in your fantasy world to the next level, you can add layers of meaning. This way, a name isn't just a bunch of like pretty sounds, it actually says something. That said, I recommend using this method mostly for important characters. Doing it for everyone else is, well, a lot of work for pretty much nothing actually. So when we talk about names with meaning behind them, we can roughly divide them into 4 categories, like patronymics and metronymics. Patronymics aren't something you often see in modern Western culture, but you can still hear echoes of them, like for example in Irish surnames, prefixes like "mac" or with apostrophe mean son of or grandson of. In Germanic names, you can find endings like "sen", meaning son of. Now think about the culture your character comes from. Is a patronymic or metronymic important there? Do people care about lineage? Do they introduce themselves through their parents or relatives? Occupational names. Occupational names are probably the most common thing on earth, like smith, cooper, weaver. You find them everywhere in every culture, so use them in your fantasy world too. If it feels too boring or too like real world, give them some fantasy twist. I don't know, like Iron Maker, Silk Fingers. I don't know, it's your fantasy, not mine. Number C, clan or house names. House names work great for noble families because, let's be honest, nobody cares about commoners. A noble house usually has a long history full of drama, weird uncles, betrayals, and legends. Also consider, is the clan or house system important in your society? Like in Salvatore's Dark Elf trilogy, the Drow have a very strict hierarchical structure and house name hold real power. Honorifics and epithets. Henry the cool guy, Elora the wicked witch. These instantly tell you something about the character. And if you're writing epic or high fantasy, honorifics also help show historical events, famous deeds, or myths connected to that person. If a character gets an epithet, it means 2 things. First, they're important enough for people to talk about, and second, someone cared enough to name them after something they did, which is actually a big deal. People usually do not do that unless it really matters. Another type of honorific is mockery. Basically, nicknames like Dave the Terminator might just mean poor Dave walks like a Steve Robot or something like that. A lot of people jump straight to a name generator, press the button 5 times, and suddenly their cast looks like this, like Fertalion, Zendrevok, and his best friend Ben. The problem is here simple. Generators don't know your world as you do. So if you want your names to actually feel like they belong together, like they are shaped by the same language, culture, you need a couple of rules to keep things sane, as we mentioned before. So limit yourself to your phonotactic rules. You've already created your sounds rules, and that's great. Now actually follow them. If your culture doesn't allow KR at the start of the words, then Crandor or Kralk or Crush, you should not use them. Also, you should use a tonal consistency, like real languages love patterns, so should yours also. If your culture tends to end names with R, then stick to it. Suddenly, all your names start feeling related, like Halvar, Drokkar, Elvar, Thanar. You see, like instantly they are coherent. And if someone suddenly shows up named Pipito, everyone will know he's clearly not from here. Also, make nicknames or shortened forms. Real people shorten names all the time, like Alexander, Alex, Jonathan, John, Francisco, Pancho. And this trick helps your world feel more alive. Not everyone walks around, shouting full names in casual conversations, right? So give your characters nicknames, pet names, rude names, whatever makes sense in the culture and between two characters. And that's it for today. I hope that was useful for you and for your language, for your names, and you got some ideas. And if you like this video, please put like, leave a comment, share with your friends, family, with anybody else outside. I will be quite happy. I hope it was useful. Thank you very much. Happy writing. Bye.